Hi, I'm Mariam Ahmed, and you're watching Uni TV, your window into university life. Today we're looking at the amazing innovations coming out of uni research. There's a revolutionary new process that can restore eyesight, the future of surgery without stitches, and how the public transport system of the future might be scooter-powered. All this plus pulling pants down on the couch. Enjoy!
In less than a day spent in hospital, this patient's eyesight will be restored. Stem cells from the patient's own eye have been harvested on this simple contact lens. This will be placed on the eye to overcome the damage caused by blinding corneal disease. Within weeks, sight will dramatically improve. It's a world-first technique pioneered by researchers at the University of New South Wales and colleagues at Sydney's Prince of Wales Hospital. The novel procedure, which is simple and inexpensive, offers hope to people with a range of blinding conditions that involve corneal damage from infections, burns, and chemotherapy.
It's a simple technique. It requires a small biopsy from a patient. It requires 5 mils of sera. The cells are cultured over a 10-day period on a contact lens, so it requires no foreign human material or animal products. During the culture procedure, the tissue is firmly adherent to the contact lens surface. The pink solution is like fertilizer for the cells. The cells seem to transfer from the contact lens surface onto the patient's ocular surface.
Once the stem cells have multiplied, the lens is dispatched to surgeon Dr. Stephanie Watson of Sydney's Prince of Wales Hospital.
The procedure is relatively non-invasive. For the patient, they merely come into the hospital for a couple of hours and then they're able to go home afterwards. At the beginning of the procedure, we remove all the damaged cells from the front of the eye. Following this, we take the contact lens with the cells that's been cultured in the lab and simply place it on the front of the eye. Afterwards, the patient uses eye drops and then returns the next day and we examine the contact lens to make sure it's in place.
The researchers are hoping the procedure can be adapted for use in other parts of the eye and even in other organs.
We're very excited about this technique because we think it might be applicable to other major organs of the human body, such as the skin, because after all, the skin behaves in a very similar manner to the cornea.
I'm Anton Grimes. I'm an industrial designer at the University of New South Wales, and this is my final design project, the Link scooter system. The original idea was to produce both a scooter and a hub, so two independent objects that work together as a system. But then the sort of leap of logic was, why develop every single component? You know, why not simply use existing infrastructure? The scooter itself is a rather lightweight, simple, very robust electric scooter. So it's 100 watts power, so it doesn't require registration, and it's just a single person use with a foot pedal control to go forwards or to brake. To make it to the finals of the Dyson Award is, pretty significant. I entered that along with 90 other students, and I've now made it down to the final 13 along with another 4 students from New South Wales. Okay, so the way the system works is that the users are issued with a card, which they press up against the interface, at which point it brings up a screen. They select which one of the 3 scooters they want to use. They touch it, it pops out, at which point they fold up the scooter and assemble it using that release mechanism here. They can then ride it to the next destination, at which point they see another hub and they can return it by just clipping it straight back into the unit, where it's recharged for the next user. This project right now is really still a student concept idea. It does have a lot of things that need to be resolved about the way it's used and particularly legal requirements to make it production ready. But I have had a lot of interest from overseas and just from online blogs as well, people discussing the idea and how they'd like to see it and what changes they think are necessary. So it's been good to see a lot of feedback internationally as well about how they'd see it sitting in a different environment that's not Sydney. Single biggest challenge of the project, I think it was probably in getting it to fit and suit an already existing system, so getting my design to work with what was already on the streets. Okay, so a key part of this project was also looking at the need for independent movement when people needed it. So imagine being able to hire a scooter from a pole like this and not have to wait on buses or timetables and simply take it right to the destination, return it to any other pole, dock it, recharge it, and then it's ready for the next user.
It might look like a standard car, but this Subaru Liberty wagon is really a high-tech laboratory on wheels. Donated to UNSW by Subaru Australia, it's a unique road safety research tool that could make our roads a lot safer. The first of its kind in New South Wales, it's chock full of cameras and equipment to help researchers better understand driver performance in real-world conditions.
The exciting thing about this car is, which the whole team, the research team, is really thinking about, is how these cameras are going to be monitoring the person that's sitting inside the vehicle. We'll be able to track their eyes, where they're looking. We'll be able to look externally as to where the environment that they're driving. There's laser systems also that are going to be able to track the lane change, as well as the proximity of vehicles front to rear. And so we'll be able to monitor the environment in terms of what conditions the driver's being confronted with and how they're reacting.
And it's not your average bunch of groceries in the back.
This is effectively what $200,000 will buy you.
UNSW researchers will use the car to answer a host of road safety questions. How long should P-platers really spend in supervised driving, for example? And what affects drivers' ability to pick out road signs from all the other distractions on the road?
The instrumented car is really a dream come true for we researchers. It allows us to validate some of the work that we do in the lab, actually out on the road, and to measure the sorts of responses of drivers, either to themselves or to conditions on the road. So it's ideal for us to use, after we've done a lot of work in the lab, to then use the instrumented car to make sure that what we see in the lab actually does occur on the road as well.
Perhaps the biggest challenge confronting road safety researchers is to help reduce the number of fatigue-related road deaths, currently standing at 300 per year, the same as a jumbo jet crashing and killing everyone on board.
Fatigue really is an intractable problem, one of our major road safety intractable problems, simply because it happens to everybody and can happen at any time. I mean, certainly if you haven't slept much last night, then you're going to experience fatigue and you'll have more trouble driving safely. If you've been awake for long periods of time, you're going to experience fatigue and going to have trouble driving safely. But the trouble is we're not very good at deciding when it is that our fatigue is too great for us to drive. And in fact, many times, most people will actually continue to drive even though they know they're tired and they probably shouldn't be driving at all, should be taking a taxi.
The Injury Risk Management Research Centre will put nearly $1 million into road safety research over the next 3 years. This vital work is being supported by the National Health and Medical Research Council, the Australian Research Council and Subaru Australia.
It's a rechargeable battery that can store energy for peak demand times. Known as the vanadium redox flow battery, it converts chemical energy into electrical energy by pumping electrolyte fluid through reactor cells. Developed by Maria Skylas-Kazakos, it has the lowest ecological footprint of any energy storage system because it doesn't use toxic heavy metals such as lead and cadmium. And unlike lead-based acid batteries, the fluid in a vanadium battery is reusable and has an indefinite lifespan. VRBs can repeatedly absorb and release huge amounts of electricity at the drop of a hat, thereby helping power stations to cope with peak energy demand. They can make renewable energies more reliable too, by storing and supplying energy for times when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. More than 20 VRB systems have been installed in Japan, Australia, Europe and USA to store wind and solar energy for peak energy load levelling and emergency backup power systems. The technology is being commercialised by the Australian company V-Fuel Proprietary Limited.
Hi, I'm Fran Strawn and today I'm on the couch with Simon Hunt. Simon, you're a lecturer at the College of Fine Arts and Digital Media. You specialise in sound and music, but a lot of people are more familiar with you as the character Pauline Pantsdown. Can you tell us a little bit about how that character came about?
Yeah, no, sure. Pauline Pantsdown was a parody of Pauline Hanson. Pauline Hanson was a politician who rose to prominence in the late 90s in Australia, who was best known, I guess, for her views about a so-called privilege of Aboriginal people and Asian migrants, what I really perceived it to be a racist agenda. So I decided that the best way to take her on in that way was really to do a parody, and in that I took various speeches of hers and I cut them up in a digital sampler and made these 2 pop songs. And one of those songs, "I'm a Backdoor Man" for the Ku Klux Klan, was banned. Banned temporarily and went into a high court case. The other one, "I Don't Like It," became a top 10 hit, and I became a sort of a popular character for about 6 months or so, and I actually ran for the New South Wales Senate in the 1998 federal election at the same time as working against her. So it was like a sort of a serious political thing within this sort of comic guise, I guess.
And you managed to merge politics with popular culture. I mean, one of the satirical songs that you wrote was nominated for an ARIA. Was that the beginning of your experimentations with music, or did that start before that?
Oh no, music and I go a long way back. You know, I played in heavy metal bands when I was 12 years old, and then sort of punk and, you know, experimental stuff. I was with a band in Berlin in the mid-1980s working with sort of classical structures and audiovisual stuff, and then I formed a duo with some members with a guy from the Berlin Philharmonic doing some contemporary classical music throughout Europe in the 80s, and then I was doing some film music and film sound, and then I left music for a while and got into filmmaking and had some successful short films. This is like the 90s, I guess. And then Pauline was sort of like my return to music in an utterly different way, I guess. That sort of Pauline somehow brought me back, which is a surprising thing to think of, that she could have done that to me. But it's funny because I think that satire, with using media and using media cut up to satirise things, is much more prevalent than it was 10 years ago. You have every sort of 14, 15-year-old in the world sort of cutting up movies to sort of give them different meanings and uploading them on YouTube, and it's sort of, people are a lot more, I think, media aware now, and so to get something that sort of cuts into people's awareness is a much bigger job these days, perhaps, than it was back then.
Because everyone's putting their view across, and media is accessible now, and everyone can sit at home.
What people refer to as Web 2, which is sometimes a cliche, sometimes exaggerated in its definitions, but there definitely is a sort of a trend towards people sort of seeing themselves as being part of the media interface, even, you know, in the way that we socially organise ourselves, or even the art world, you know, even the fine arts world. I mean, I'm from the College of Fine Arts, and the fine arts world runs itself through Facebook, with organisation of exhibitions and little pictures popping up and reminders and things like that. So it's very much a different media interface that we live in, you know. So I guess if you look back to something like Pauline 10 years ago, that was me trying to sort of like imitate her media interface. But I think everyone's doing that in some way now.
And getting back to your music, I know that you record and produce electroacoustic music, and that you've got an interest in the significance of African music socially.
The interest in African music, I guess, is that's a research interest. I'm interested in the perspective by which we look at sound and music in a global culture, and that we tend to still within European-based education systems like Australia, which, you know, very much uses an English model in a lot of ways still, that we shouldn't really be looking at sound and music always from a Eurocentric position. Just simply that if you look at the way people appreciate sound and music within different cultures of the world, the African sort of ideas of music and the place of music within African culture is reflected in a lot more countries and a lot more of the surface of the planet than perhaps the European idea of classical music or its flip side of sound art. They're more of a bit of a cul-de-sac in some ways, or one branch of the tree. And I tend to, when I say my interest in African music, it's not necessarily everyone should sit around and play drums, but it's more about we can examine a greater area of culture and types of cultures across the planet when we do it from an African centre than we can from a European one, for example.
That's great. Thanks for your time today, Simon.
Thanks very much.
visualizations of processes related to explosions or bullet trajectories are some part of my work that I'm doing. This came about more accidentally than anything else, and I was primarily interested in getting as much information about a flow field, and in the process I happened to generate images that could be looked upon as parts of art. I wouldn't consider myself an artist by no means, and it's nature that does the art, and I'm just there to capture it. Instead of a brush or a chisel and a hammer to sort of sculpture something or some other tools, I use optical equipment to capture this. So I visualize something that is also invisible at the beginning. The visualization of flows, of air flows, is difficult in the sense that air is transparent. With the advent of high-speed video cameras that allow you to take these pictures of these very transient, very fast-moving phenomena with frame rates of up to 1 million frames per second. If artists actually recognize the potential that is in there, it might be that we have these images being taken almost entirely for the purpose of creating an artistic picture. So we might see something like this hanging in a museum.
The demand for food production is increasing, but this traditionally labour-intensive and family-based industry has struggled to retain the younger generation in jobs that are often difficult, unsafe and repetitive. There is a great need to automate farm machinery, drive it beyond the capability of human operators and yet maintain accurate crop plantation. Dr. Jay Katapidia from the School of Mechanical and Manufacturing Engineering and Dr. Ray Eaton from the School of Electrical Engineering and Telecommunications are developing a solution: the driverless tractor.
The main research is to get these ground vehicles to very accurately follow a certain prescribed path. We call this autonomous navigation of off-road vehicles. So there is no point in rebuilding a tractor, we go and buy a tractor. And then the next stage is to go and instrument this so that it can develop capabilities to navigate all by itself. When you buy the tractor, you only get the steering wheel, of course, because this is a manually driven tractor. And then all these bits and pieces that are here are put on by us. And what you see here is a tiny motor which is strong enough to do the steering when the tractor is under power steering. Both these pedals are actually interfaced to the built-in computer. So we don't have to mount any motors here. We get our computer to talk to the tractor's computer and give the commands directly to the tractor's computer. That way the propulsion takes place. So GPS will actually say exactly how the machine is moving, and these sensors that are here, the encoders, they will tell how the wheels are working.
The system will initially be available as a retrofittable conversion kit. This means that the manual tractors farmers own today will become autonomous tractors tomorrow.
The humble crab. Who would have imagined it carries life-saving qualities? But this suit of armour is proving to have protective abilities reaching far beyond the world of crustaceans. UNSW researchers are using the unique properties of crab shell to create a novel seal that will allow surgery without stitches. Known as Surgilux, the device is a thin polymer film based on chitin, the element that allows a crab shell to stick to the membrane underneath. The film is placed on a surgical wound and exposed to an infrared laser. This heats the film just enough to meld it with the flesh.
It's almost like welding the chitosan bond to the tissue of the wound site. So the operation is simple, it's quick, it's cost effective. You get around variations in technical ability of surgeons with their kind of stitching. There is effectively no scar tissue formation, and the great thing about the chitosan film is also antimicrobial. So you're also helping to prevent infection. Sutures are a 5,000-year-old technology. They've changed very little in that period. In themselves, they act as a source of infection. They're gold standard purely because of their bonding strength. They will pull two pieces of tissue together, and it would take a significant amount of strength, 100 kilopascals in fact, to pull them apart. So if you have conditions where there is fluid leakage, for example blood, spinal fluid, or even gases, air from the lungs, these are things that you don't want happening internally.
It's the ability of the material to actually adhere and so really stick to the biological material that makes it stand apart without the need to do suturing.
Surgilux has Food and Drug Administration approval in the United States and is expected to be commercially available within 5 years.
Well, that's all we've got for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Mariam Ammon. Join us next time on Uni TV.